What about when they do actually pass? This was a question in my comment section where I was talking about how my mother is dead to me but walking the earth. My mother is a sociopath and a narcissist, and she's been dead to me for over 30 years, but she's still physically alive. What about it? Are you asking, does life get better? Does life get worse? Does it stay the same? I'll just assume all of the above. My mother's alive, so I can't tell you definitively 100,000% how I'll feel. I can predict how I'll feel based on, to some degree, but I can't guarantee it because, I don't know until I get there. I can tell you, though, that when my grandfather died, I felt a sense of relief. And I'm not sure why I felt a sense of relief, because I was already an adult. I hadn't seen him in a couple of decades. I can't remember exactly when he died, but it was probably a good 20 years that I hadn't seen him. I was an adult, like he couldn't hurt me anymore. I think little Marnie just felt relieved, so I felt relieved, kind of thing. The little girl inside of me who was still carrying some fear of him felt relieved. When my grandmother died, I felt nothing. It was like a stranger died. And I didn't find out right away. It was a long time before I found out. I didn't feel anything for her. When I was a child, up until I was in my mid-20s, I really thought she hung the moon. Actually, no, longer than that. I thought she hung the moon and was a safe space for me, a loving person to me, until I was probably in my 40s, now that I think about it, and I'm 59 now. And in the last few years, only in the last few years, have I been able to make sense out of some memories in terms of the reality of what she did to me and how she was complicit in the abuse that my grandfather was perpetrating. Like, she was present, she lured me into it, under the guise of cuddling and a love up. That's what she used to call it. It makes me nauseous. And so I think when she died, feeling nothing was because of the fact that even then, without the context that I have now, I recognized she was actually a stranger to me, that I never really knew who she was. Looking back at her, I can recognize times where she used me as a weapon against my mother, the way that my mother was beginning to use my daughter before I went no contact as a weapon against me. Meaning, like, my mother would show me that she could love my daughter and not me. And my grandmother, the OG, the original gaslighter, did the same thing with my mother. And the difference there would be the outcome. So when my mother did that, it would just break my heart and leave me in a place of, why can't you love me too? And it would fill my heart in a place of, well, I love how you love my daughter. Love. I didn't know any better at the time. I really didn't. I feel so sorry for that little girl that was me, and for my daughter that I ever exposed her to my mother. And thankfully, my mother didn't have enough time to do long-lasting damage to her. With my grandmother, when my grandmother would do that, my mother would abuse me 62,000 bajillion times as hard. And what's particularly heinous about that is I know my grandmother knew, and she was setting that situation in motion so I would need her and love her more. Really such a sick and twisted dynamic. So now let's get to what happens when my mother actually physically leaves the earth, what I think it will look like for me. If I'm able to successfully bring my mother to justice, I know that I won't be able to get justice for what she did to my first stepfather, but I am working on something else with her most recent domestic partner who passed away. So my mother had 6 significant others. 5 she was married to, 1 was a domestic partner. And I believe that with this last one, and so out of those 6, 2 divorced her, 4 died when they were with her, 1 of cancer. So I feel that this last death, I have some ability to get justice, but she might die before then. So if she dies before I'm able to bring some, justice, to have her pay a consequence for what she's done, even though I know I can't do it with my first stepfather, then I'll probably just feel peace when she dies. And I don't think I'll even feel relief, because there's nothing to feel relieved from. I don't know. I mean, anything can happen, right? I could be full on triggered, and it could lead me to grief of what never will be. Who knows? Knowing myself the way I do and where I am in my journey now, that's what I think. If I'm unable to get any justice, I know I'm going to be angry. And, that's just something I'll have to work through and process, because I don't want to hold on to an emotion that doesn't serve me, but I do want to honor the emotion that serves me all at the same time. So, and what I mean by that is, as a child growing up under a mother like that, I was never allowed to have emotions. And so anger for me is just like any other emotion, and I'm just grateful to have it. And a lot of times it's fuel for me too. So I'm able to put it to good use. I just don't want to give my mother the satisfaction of having any emotion attached to her. I know that that's something she would enjoy, and that doesn't serve a purpose for me unless I use it as fuel, as I said earlier. All that to be said, I will write an obituary when my mother dies, and I will publish that obituary. And the reason is that I feel that I get to have my say, and I know what's going to be written to some degree when she dies. Evil never dies. It's like, I feel like it's going to take forever. My family of origin, my relatives, I don't like to call them family. When my grandmother died, blatantly lied in the obituary. They said that it's in writing that she was a loving grandmother and a loving great-grandmother to all of my children, one of which she had never laid eyes on before. And when I saw that, I realized, you know what? I get to publish the truth. I might feel differently about it at the time, and it's not for revenge or anything like that. If I wanted to take revenge, I would be naming my mother on this platform. Not to say I never will. If I'm able to bring her to justice, I absolutely will at that point in time. But this isn't about her. It's about me. It's about my healing journey. And it's about all of you out there who share my experience, who had a mother or a father or both that are like mine. And so I want to keep them without a face and keep the face and the spotlight on us, the victim survivors, so that we focus on our healing and recognize that we're not alone. And it's not just my mother or, somebody's father. It's kind of a universal, again, it's just not about her. How much would she hate that, by the way? And that's why I don't name her. But if I was truly going to be vindictive or trying to take revenge or something like that, I would be naming her. At this point in time, just as a little side note, I feel really grateful to be able to be a part of this community for the healing that we provide one another. And it's really elevated my life in a way that I could not have imagined, in terms of I just feel so connected and not alone anymore, because throughout my sharing my story, I've come to know so many amazing survivors out there. So I really appreciate all of you. And all this to be said, if you have a narcissistic parent, abusive parent, whatever it is, or relative that passed, how did you feel about it? And how do you think you'll feel if they are still walking this earth? Sharing is healing. I'm not going to say sharing is caring, although it is, but for us, sharing is healing and our continued growth together as a community of not just survivors, but thrivers. Again, I appreciate all of you, and thank you so much for being here, and thank you for the question.